Good evening, my Trues Clues aficionados. I hope you're doing good out there on this Thursday evening. And tomorrow is New Year's. Hi! I hope you guys are being safe out there, celebrating, doing whatever you want to do. Just make sure that you come home in one piece, stay out of jail, don't get picked up, be safe, watch your drinks so nobody gives you that roofie thing. And let's get into tonight's show. As I said, we're covering Colorful Colorado right now, and this is a solved case, and it's rather an old case, but not as old as the last one. According to police records, a woman's decomposing body was pulled out of a ravine near Boulder Canyon Drive by several fishermen on July 1st, 1982. The body was later identified as 20-year-old Susan Becker. She had 13 stab wounds to her chest and neck, and she was covered on her head by a beach towel. There was also a black-handled knife by her hand, believed to have belonged to Miss Becker, and was found, as I said, by her right hand. It was later determined that the knife had not caused the wounds to Miss Becker. A close friend of Miss Becker told investigators at the time that she was on Pearl Street Mall on June 20th, 1982, and that was the last time she was seen alive. Two fishermen in the canyon discovered her badly decomposed body in the rocky terrain and heavy vegetation, and it was homicide, without a doubt. Susan Becker had graduated from Boulder High School in 1979, same year that I graduated, and was working as a packager at the Pearl Street Mall Market when she was killed. In fact, family and friends said the spirited Becker would often go into the very area of Boulder Canyon where she was eventually found to go sunbathing. And again, knowing what we do about serial killers and homicide victims, it was pretty likely that she had been stalked and watched, and God only knows what else he was doing while he was watching her sunbathing. Rufine said her daughter was always happy. She was really a fun-loving girl, she said. Susan Becker's family didn't know she was missing when her body was found. Oh my gosh, how horrific is that? I mean, you hear about people finding out about their loved ones' deaths or murder or being in a car accident on the news. Well, here's a perfect example of it. It's so sad that that's how they found out. She can still remember what it was like finding out, said her mom. Terrible shock, she said. Just terrible shock, and the case baffled investigators for some time, even bringing up the possibility that Becker may have committed suicide. For more than 30 years, the investigators were unable to say what happened to 20-year-old Susan Becker. While detectives never officially named a suspect, Becker's family was always confident they knew who was responsible. We figured all along it had to be John Argue, Becker's mother, Rufine, who still lives in Boulder, said Friday, right after they discovered it was him. We went through just so many years knowing. Who else could it have been? Sure enough, the suspicions of Becker's family were confirmed after the Boulder County Sheriff's Office announced Thursday detectives now believe Argue, a Longmont man and suspected serial killer who died in 2009, was responsible for Susan Becker's murder, officially closing the 1982 cold case murder. Sure enough, the suspicions of Becker's family were confirmed. Argue, a Longmont man and a suspected serial killer. Then in 2010, DNA match linked the now deceased Argue to the stabbing murder of his Longmont neighbor, 94-year-old Orna Smith, whose body was discovered in Big Out Meadows in Larimer County, just a few days after Becker's body was found. Days after Smith's body was found, Argue also attacked a 26-year-old University of Colorado student with a knife. However, in 2010, Larimer County detectives' ongoing search for Smith's killer made detectives give Argue another look in Becker's case as well. Smith, Argue's next-door neighbor on Kimbark Street, went missing July 8, 1982, and was found dead with 5 stab wounds the following day near Big Out Meadows in Larimer County. Her purse and shoes were missing. Argue was investigated in her death at the time. They were convinced John Argue did it, they just didn't have enough probable cause for it. And I don't know if they linked the two deaths together at that time, but you can see his modus of operandus was the same. And again, who knows how many people that same stalking method of death was applied to. Before Argue had even moved out of Boulder County, he had been convicted of an 18-year-old stabbing and killing of his 14-year-old sister-in-law. He was always a person of interest in Becker's murder, but there was no evidence to press charges. Argue figured as a person of interest in the investigation, however, declined to cooperate with investigators, said Sergeant Jason Olkers. Statements provided by investigations by Argue's family placed him in the hiking area where Becker's body was found. But with the Smith murder was different, now attributed to Argue with evidence in his diary that connected him to the slaying. That was enough to pin Becker's death on him as well. There was not enough evidence to link him to Becker's murder, but whatever was in the diary did confirm that he possibly did it. He had said something like he lost his soul on this day, and that was the day of Becker's murder. Several days later, Argue was arrested and convicted for attempting to abduct a 26-year-old University of Colorado female student at knife point, July 15, 1982. And God only knows he probably had that same type of death for her. Stabbing her to death, maybe after torturing her and assaulting her. After serving his sentence in Colorado Department of Corrections for the abduction, Argue was returned to Illinois in 1984 to complete the sentence for murdering his sister. Argue was 18 when he stabbed his sister-in-law after he reportedly made sexual advances on the 14-year-old girl and she rebuffed them, Ainsworth said from the police department. The teenager immediately confessed to the killing to his wife, a priest, and then the police. He was imprisoned for that crime. In January 1982, after his release, he moved to Boulder County with relatives to start over, initially to Boulder and then to Longmont. By March 1982, his arrest and conviction in the kidnapping in Colorado was a violation of his parole in Illinois, so he was sent back to Joliet, Illinois to serve additional prison time because the conviction constituted a violation of his parole from his sister-in-law's murder. He remained in prison until 1989 when he was released. He remained in Illinois. We don't know what he was doing for those 20 years, Ainsworth said. Of the 2 decades, Argue was free before his drug overdose death. And I don't think it takes rocket science to know that serial killers do not stop killing. If anything, they escalate and can become into a frenzy. So I don't know if more evidence will come up later that this individual perpetrator committed more crimes than what we know of. Indeed, it would be not a surprise to probably the police and to the average person either. With this in mind, I'm hoping my Trues Clues aficionados will stay safe out there. Happy New Year's to you. I'll be talking to you tomorrow night.